Good evening and welcome to Graphic Adaptations Reader's Advisory. Today we're going to be talking about the benefits of graphic novels that are adapted from classics, manga, from YA novels, and just in general how they support teaching and learning. My name is Rebecca Oxley. I'm the librarian 3 at the Greenbelt Library branch, and I have been reading comics and manga and all kinds of adaptations pretty much since I could hold a book. So I'm excited to be here.
I'm Storm. I'm from the Akaki Library branch. I've been reading manga since the late 90s, and I recently, in my college years, got into American graphic novels and trying to branch into that environment.
My name is. Go
ahead. My name is Ria. I work at the New Carrollton branch, and I've been reading manga since probably I started with manga when I was 11 or 12, and my brother got me into Watchmen and Alan Moore's stuff shortly thereafter, and I never looked back.
My name is Jade Campbell. I am at the Mount Rainier Library. I started reading graphic novels and manga maybe about 5 years when I joined the system. I kind of started off with things like One Punch Man and My Hero and One Piece. And now I'm into a lot of Marvel and a little bit of DC.
I'm Maria. I'm also at the New Carrollton Library. I also started with manga and even anime in the 90s as a kid. So I got really into them, started off with Sailor Moon, which was like my big anime, and then manga after that. A little after that, I got into comics and graphic novels. So the first comic I picked up was The Amazing Spiderman, and then followed DC Comics, and I never looked back.
Excellent. Well, I think we should maybe start off our program talking about Manga Classics. And these would be classical works of Western literature that are then adapted into manga. Storm, what did you want to share with us?
Okay, so I did the classic, whoops, I'm trying to remember where camera is. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I did an interesting, Marvel actually did graphic novel of this. I thought it was really good. They follow the book very well. They use a lot of the dialogue, so word heavy for the graphic novel, which I really liked. Hold on, flipping. One of the downsides in reading a Marvel, at least this particular Marvel, for the style, this is styles, wise, so you might like it, you might not, is a lot of the facial features I feel like were kind of like doll-like, or like it appeared the same, kind of creepy in a way to me, but it's beautiful artwork still, so you might enjoy it. The color consistency for the artists was kind of all over the place, but they followed the book pretty much to a T, doing all the major scenes, and they even had a narrator, which I really liked. And you might not be able to see, but the narrator is in yellow, kind of introducing new scenes, new characters and such. Very a plus with kids who are trying to get into this, because they use a lot of new vocabulary that is really good and helpful. And it's it's one of my favorite classics, and I just love it. It's funny, humorous, and it's about two people who they think they're vastly different, and they learn that they're a lot more alike than they think they are. So it's like a romance. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, we owe a lot of very popular rom-com films, teenage films, to Pride and Prejudice. Jade, which one did you want to share with us?
Right. So my classic is the Shakespeare play Macbeth. Um, Anyone who has read Shakespeare knows that sometimes his reading, his language could be a little difficult to follow. This book here even follows the same early modern English format that Shakespeare used. So sometimes it can be tough to read, but what makes it so great are the images. So if you like classic manga, you'll probably even say, "Oh, that looks like so and so." You'll probably recognize some of these anime eyes that kind of never lie. You can tell when somebody's upset. You can tell when somebody feels guilty, or when someone feels like, oh, I'm being tricked or something like that. Like the emotions really play on their eyes in here. But what I really enjoy are how you might find a metaphor in the book, and the artist would back the metaphor up and kind of turn it into something literal. Like, while this angel and this bird, they're mentioned, they're not really seen, but we get the chance to see, how Macbeth or how any of the other characters are feeling. So I would definitely encourage anybody who is starting off with Shakespeare, who might find it difficult. You might want to grab this, or Romeo or Juliet, or another Shakespearean play that is in manga format.
Awesome. Thanks, Jade. Rio, what manga classic did you read?
So I picked Dracula, which, as you can see, has a very sexy cover. So I read the original when I was a teenager myself. It was shortly after the Twilight craze, and I was really into vampires, and I was like, just really excited to read any kind of any other vampire fiction. And I remember thinking, Dracula it's a really fun, like, kind of spooky, suspenseful read that really, like, started a lot of the vampire tropes that we still use today. But it was a little hard to get into because of these really long descriptions. And one of the great things about the graphic novel is that it's mostly dialogue. Like, there's probably like a larger than average amount of like description and like text in the boxes, like some prose from the original novel, but like most of it's images and it's dialogue. So like, there's in the novel, there's like this really long description of Dracula's castle, and then in the graphic novel they don't even describe it, they just show it to you, which is, I think, a lot easier to get into, especially for a reluctant reader. So I really enjoyed it. I thought the art was beautiful. It's like a very classic manga style. And it's like kind of sometimes really jarring to see like manga expressions and like sound effects in this, something that I know is like a classic Victorian novel. But I really enjoyed it. I think the only downside I would say to this one is that there are like a couple of points where the suspense kind of hinges on you not understanding what's going on visually. Like at the beginning, Dracula, he picks up Jonathan, the main character, in a coach, and Jonathan's like, oh, it's like this old guy who's like this coach driver. It like doesn't even pay him any attention, and then it's revealed later that it's Dracula in the novel. But in the graphic novel, it's the same like image, like it's the same person, like he doesn't do anything to disguise himself. So you kind of know immediately, there isn't as much suspense there. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a much quicker read than the original novel, and it's really enjoyable.
That's a really interesting difference. Maria, which book did you read that was a manga classic?
So for my choice, I actually picked Jane Eyre. So it's like it's the same publisher that Jade used for Macbeth, And what I thought was very interesting was because the Japanese use expressions so well, I think with Jane Eyre being so dark, it became out very, I think, very true to the novel. The only thing that I thought was interesting was they have a lot of like comedic sense into this, which Jane Eyre doesn't really have too much of it in the novel itself. But we get to see her grow up, and even like some of the scenes, like her and her cousin John, when he hits her with a book and like she flinches and hits her head against the door, she actually does bleed. So because it's black and white, it's not as gory as one would think. So I think that's a great aspect to it. Because it's Gothic literature, I think the biggest thing to take away is Mr. Rochester's house. So mansions and castles are a huge thing in Gothic literature. And I think actually seeing it depicted is really great way to just have the person reading it visualize it, especially if they've never read the book but wanted to give the manga a try. It's also really cool because even though it looks like a certain type of way in the day, at night it changes. So it's very cool to see like all of the nooks and crannies to the mansion. And even like when you see Bertha, like the big secret, it's really great to see how scary and crazed she is, especially right before she destroys Jane's wedding dress. So I think it's really cool. Just like Jane Eyre, the novel, Jane is narrating this. So it's like the small boxes of her dialogue, like as if she's doing a journal entry. So it's really great that they kept that along, and they do put the whole book in this manga in like a short amount of like pages. So I think it was really great. It was a great depiction of it.
Yeah, it sounds very accessible. Another place where we can talk about adaptations being advantageous is when we have great content or characters that start off in a young adult or light novel and then get translated to a graphic adaptation. So Storm, what would you recommend for that?
I did the book Beautiful Creatures by Kami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. Did this beautiful graphic novel that was done by Cassandra Jean. I really enjoyed it. I love the artwork in it. So in the book, Ethan Waite is the main character, and I was worried that for a graphic novel they wouldn't have him as because they have so many different characters in the book that I thought they would lose focus on his narration, but they did not. He is still the narrator. He's still the main character, which I really enjoyed about that they kept that true. Also, they follow the book really closely. I was kind of afraid if any one of you had seen the movie, if anyone has seen the movie, they do a totally kind of different ending than is in the book, but they actually followed through really well with the exact kind of book ending. The only downside really is because the book is so big, it's a lot of pages. Of course, with anything that they're trying to condense, some parts kind of seem choppy or rushed, but other than that, I thought they did a fabulous job, and I highly recommend this. This was such a well done YA book to graphic novel, and I love when they do YA novels into graphic novels because you get to enjoy maybe possibly one of your favorite books a second time round.
Mm-hmm.
The only another downside with these is that they tend to not continue the series. So The Beautiful Creatures is, I believe, a 4-book series. But unfortunately, so far that I know, there's just the one for the first book. So that is the thing you have to consider, but highly recommend this one.
Yeah, no, that happened to me with the Twilight series where they made like 2 beautiful books and then nothing else. So awesome. That's an awesome recommendation. Thanks, Storm. Jade, what YA to graphic novel adaptation would you like to recommend?
All right, so my recommendation is Monster by Walter Dean Myers. This adaptation is adapted by Guy A. Sims. And now Monster is a great graphic novel for anybody interested in the court system or social justice or anything like that. It features a young man by Steve Harmon. He's 16, and he's on trial for murder. And his trial includes an all-white jury, judge. He's practically him and the other guy being convicted, King, are the only people of color who are inside or who are being accused. Now, our mission as the audience is to try to figure out, is Steve innocent? Should he be on trial? And throughout the story, you can make up your own mind. But what I really enjoy about the graphic is the difference in writing style. And of course, the images, but the novel is written as if it were a movie script. So you were following a movie script. And that's because Steve's, his passion is creating movies, or he wants to be a director. So throughout the novel, you see him comparing his situation to a movie scene, or trying to figure out how he can make this situation into a movie. I'm trying to find a page now where you see him in the graphic, you see him as if he is the director, and now you have everybody involved in the case talking to each other as if they're all cast members, as if they're all friends. So, this graphic, this covers a lot of different things: discrimination in the courtroom. It covers art therapy. It covers loneliness. So those are themes that pop out when you're reading this. So I definitely recommend Monster to almost anybody looking to expand their horizons, or anybody looking to, understand social differences and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's always thrilling when a really powerful book gets an equally powerful graphic novel that takes you into a new direction.
Yes.
Ruya, what would you recommend for YA to graphic novels?
So I really liked the Mortal Instruments Volume 1 and 2 graphic novels, which are an adaptation of City of Bones. And I have kind of a love-hate relationship with the City of Bones, the original novel, because I've read it when I was a teenager and I really loved it. And I kind of continued to read more of Cassandra Clare's work. And then when I was an adult, I went back and reread City of Bones, and I was like, man, this is like it is like a genuinely compelling concept. And there are some great characters in here, but her prose just is like so bad when you compare it to her writing later on in her career. Great thing about a graphic novel is that there really isn't all that much prose. It's pretty much all dialogue in this one. So I don't have to deal with, the parts that I don't like as much. There's this really nice art style. It's the same artist as the book that Storm, the Beautiful Creatures graphic novel, Cassandra Jean. And she is great. Her art style isn't really for me personally. It's like a little bit sketchy for my taste, but she is like a very talented artist, and she does like a great job giving each of the characters their own like feel, like like they feel different from each other visually. And there are like a couple of other things that I felt like the novel kind of glazes over. Like it's narrated by Clary, the main character, and her mother goes missing at the beginning, and it's sort of weird to be reading the novel and see that she doesn't really think about her mother going missing all that often. She meets this cute boy at the beginning, and it's mostly her thinking about him. And because there isn't really that internal narration in the graphic novel, it's not really as apparent that she's just thinking about boys. I really enjoyed it. I do think, Storm, you mentioned that like the pacing feels like a little bit quicker in graphic novel form, because graphic novels are just like a quicker read. And I did notice that. I do feel like the pacing is just like very different. And it just does go faster. And you feel like you don't have as much time to really like appreciate each moment. But you know, that's kind of something that comes with the graphic novel format. Overall, I did really enjoy it, and I would definitely recommend it to fans of the Mortal Instruments series, especially people who have kind of a love-hate relationship with it like I do.
Awesome. All right, Maria, what would you like to recommend to us?
So what I'd like to recommend is, like Maria, I was also a part of the vampire craze, but what stuck with me the longest was the Vampire Academy. So you got the book and the graphic novel. So while this is a series that does take place in a supernatural world, they all are high school age, especially seniors in high school. So it doesn't shy away from dealing with depression and even family relationships, because there's 3 classes. So there's the Moroi, which are pure-blooded vampires, the Dampiers that are half human, half Moroi, and then there's the Strigoi that are like the full-blown evil undead vampires. And Dampiers, they get sent to boarding school like after maybe turning the age of 4, so they never get to see their parents, especially if they're also guardians. So because they are raised to protect the Moroi. Dampiers, because they're half and half, tend to be stronger, so that's why they're basically, I don't want to say the word bred, but they're basically bred to just become guardians for these Moroi. Rose's relationship with her best friend is actually shown very well in the graphic novel. They become even closer after Lisa's parents die in a car accident, along with her older brother. And after that, they're just inseparable. So she does go through her through depression. She even cuts herself because she's dealing with everything. And what I actually liked about the graphic novel is that it wasn't overdone. You see, usually some graphic novels are just like, you're spurting blood everywhere, but this actually wasn't too bad. Like the art itself, I actually grew to like it. I wasn't a big fan of it at first, but as you read on, the expressions actually get better as you read it. So I thought it was a really great graphic novel for that. So also the biggest thing is Rose is like a sex symbol within the book, because Dampiers tend to be curvier versus the Moroi, who are thinner and more elegant. And that's also a big thing. Body image is a huge thing within their world as well. So I think they actually demonstrated it very well, because even like when the book begins, I mean, Rose is very much doesn't look like she's 17 years old. So I think that was a great way for them to start that off. The author herself started off as an adult fiction writer and then transitioned into YA. So I think just her writing itself was definitely strong, and it transitioned very well into the graphic novel. There's a huge taboo relationship within the book, which is Rose and her mentor, Dimitri. Rose is 17 and Dimitri's 24.
Ouch.
So there is that big thing, like there is that tension that they actually show very well in the graphic novel. And like she comes to realize, I mean, can she protect her friend, or would she protect the guy who's becoming the love of her life? So I think it's a very interesting way that they portray it. But of course, I mean, what makes it tricky is that he's also attracted to her, and they both know it's not right to pursue anything. So I thought it was interesting. The dialogue was very true to the series, but I would definitely recommend this book and graphic novel, especially for fans of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can all agree that. And like that graphic novel was very fun to watch.
I think that's a really great reminder that YA and graphic novels in general allow young people to explore taboo subjects without consequences in a safe, enclosed environment. So great. That brings us to our next segment, where we can talk about comics and graphic novels that may have been adapted for film, and what kind of effect that might have on the viewer, and what deepening they might have for their understanding and perspective of the story. So Storm, if you wanted to start us off.
All right, I did Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales. I loved this so much. And the film, it was so well done. I'm sure most of you hopefully have seen the film. If you haven't, go watch it. It was, I'm so excited for him. I love his character. So this takes place shortly after the death of Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, and where Miles, as a kid, he gets bitten in a similar manner to Peter Parker, and he becomes the new Spider-Man. One of the things I loved about the artwork for this Marvel is the facial expressions are so well done. Like this is a scene where Miles' dad tells him that he doesn't want him hanging around with his uncle, and that his uncle could go to jail because of what he does. And he confesses to Miles that he's actually been in jail with his brother. And like, I just love Miles' expression. He's like, what? The facial expressions are so well done. Another thing I loved, I guess a comparison with the film, is that actually what I love about Marvel Comics is they have like the MCU, the Marvel Universe, like as an everyday background thing. So like as the Miles and his dad are talking, the Human Torch, I believe, and I think that's the Silver Surfer, but don't kill me if it's wrong because I'm not really quite sure. They just start like whiz by through the park, having a like going off to help. I love that about like the Marvel Comics. And then what I also loved is that the other Marvel characters interact with Miles more in this. So like the Avengers actually come to Miles, and they're like basically judging, putting him through kind of a trial if he should even keep these, or be entrusted with these powers. What I thought was a really cool thing. In the movie, Miles appears, I guess, kind of, it depends on what age. So in here, he gets bitten when he's young, like probably a young teen, and then it kind of flashes forward in the graphic novel where he's older, as an older teen, and he's more in tune with the actual Avengers and stuff, and helping them out. But in the movie, it's more so centered on when he's younger for the full film of when he was very first bitten. So that was a difference that I was pleasantly surprised in learning, is that they do a skip in the first volume. So now he's older, I believe 16 or 17 in this. And I'm not quite sure how old he was in the film, but I would say maybe 14, 15. But I would highly, highly recommend this. Definitely read this along with watching the film. It was a delight, and I definitely have to get the second one because it ended off at a cliffhanger, and I forgot to do that today when I was at work. So definitely tomorrow, I need to place the second volume on hold.
Awesome. Jade, which film did you pick to talk about tonight?
Oh,
you're on mute.
That's always funny. There we go. All right, so I don't have the book with me right now because our copies were checked out. So I had to go online and read it online. But what I covered was Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Now, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the movie itself, it's high in aesthetics where the graphics make you feel like you're in a video game. It feels like you're in a comic. It feels like you're in you've been immersed into some cartoon world. Where Scott Pilgrim has to fight the exes of his new girlfriend. He has like 7 exes to fight. Now, the graphic novel, I believe, has 6 volumes to it, and the first one is called Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life. It kind of gives you a deeper insight into his friends, his family, the people he's living with, the girl who he actually starts dating, which is also weird because he's the first girl he dates. He's a 23-year-old and she's 17, still in high school, basically. Ooh. And the reaction that you guys are having now is the exact same reaction that his friends had and his family had. They clowned him, they joked on him. So if you're looking for something that has a lot of comedy, a lot of laughter to it, Scott Pilgrim is the way to go. Now, he lives a very, it starts off as a very lame life, but it's also very unordinary. Basically the way he's living, the things that he's doing. He's in a band, which is pretty cool. But once again, he meets this new girl, Ramona Flowers, he has to he's challenged by these 7 powerful people who have superpowers, basically. So he has to look deep inside himself just to overcome that, to prove his love for Ramona. So I definitely recommend hopping on and grabbing the graphic novel if you want a little meatier or a little bit more substance to the Scott Pilgrim universe, because it's definitely worth getting invested into, because one, it will have you laughing for a very, very long time.
Yeah, Brian O'Malley's got such an incredible command of humor.
Yes.
And by the way, if you're looking for the Scott Pilgrim collection, you'll find it in our adult graphic novels, not in our YA graphic novels.
Oh, man, I thought it was
No, well, I mean, they're mostly read by teens. Surprise. But he put out a book called Seconds that we also have, which is really excellent one-shot graphic novel. But yeah, I love Scott Pilgrim. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am so excited to have Rhea talk about her graphic novel to movie adaptation.
So I chose Persepolis, and probably my favorite literary genre is graphic memoir, and I think Persepolis is kind of my gold standard. It's one of my favorite books. It's a really great telling of this girl's life during the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And there are these really depressing events going on, but you sort of, it's palatable because there's this really like, the narrative style is really charming at first because she's like a little girl who doesn't really understand what's going on. And she's just like, I'm just going to live my life and be like a goofy, funny child the way children are. And then, as she starts to understand more of what's going on, she's like this really like strong, like rebellious, really interesting, teenage girl expressing, how she feels about the events. And it's a really great book. I highly recommend it. And the movie I watched recently, and I was like really worried because I loved the book so much, and a lot of movie adaptations really, are not great. But I think Persepolis, it gets the events right. And it's also really, really true to the original like tone, which is incredibly important because the tone is really what makes the book, I think. And I think it achieves that, like, partially I think it's a little easier because it's an animated movie. So I think, a graphic novel to animated movie, it's the same like hand-drawn like aesthetic. I think it's easier to do an adaptation of a graphic novel than a prose novel because they're both visual media. So, like you already have something akin to like camera angles in a graphic novel. So it's, much closer to like a 1-to-1 correlation in, the scene of a graphic novel than the scene of a novel where you really have to sort of reinvent the wheel. So I definitely, first of all, recommend the book to anybody, anybody interested in Iran, anyone who, is the teenage girl, and wants to see somebody who's like themselves in terms of like, perspective, living through something very, very different. And I recommend the movie to anybody who loved the graphic novel as much as I did.
Yeah, it's an absolutely breathtaking film and really did the 2 graphic novels justice.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are 2 graphic novels. I read them as one. So I think of them as one, but it is actually 2 volumes.
Very cool. Maria, which comic or graphic novel to film did you want to talk about?
So the one I picked was an oldie but a goodie. I picked Fantastic Four. So the original, of course, was in 1961 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. but we actually have this one, which is an origin retelling by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, and the art was by David Marquez. So I thought it was really cool segue to getting the Fantastic Four crew introduced again. Even though the Amazing Spider-Man was my first comic and graphic novel, Fantastic Four heroes were the first Marvel heroes I got to see on the big screen when I was a kid. And like the art style was beautiful. I thought that the graphics were great. The colors were vivid. Even just like introducing the characters, it was really great. Looking at all of the colors, how beautifully drawn it was. I thought it was really great. And the Fantastic Four origins, like the characters are very true to Stan Lee's creations, along with the art style of Jack Kirby. So for anyone like looking to go back and see what it was like with the Fantastic Four origins, I definitely recommend it. What I loved about the Fantastic Four was that they were first and foremost friends and family. So I have 2 younger brothers, and getting superpowers as family I thought would be the coolest thing ever growing up. But it didn't happen. But what was really cool is that when we get to meet all of the characters, Dr. Reed Richards is best friends with Ben Grimm, and siblings Sue and Johnny Storm also are very close with Reed and Ben. So it was great seeing them together, and they end up going into space and get their powers through cosmic rays. So there were 2 movies for Fantastic Four Origins, and one was in 2005, which is the one I saw as a kid, and the 2015 one, which wasn't my favorite. I definitely preferred the 2005 version. What was cool about this is that we're all familiar with Doctor Doom being the main villain with the Fantastic Four, but with this graphic novel, we actually got to see Namor, who's actually a villain in some of the other Marvel comics and graphic novels like Black Panther and the X-Men. So it's really great to see, and even like seeing his world, because he is Atlantean, so there is a lot of images of him being underwater. So it was great to see the coloring, especially. I think they did an amazing job with the expressions, because sometimes like it can be lost when it's being changed into a graphic novel from a comic book sometimes as well. So the biggest thing for me was how was Ben Grimm his facial expressions changed into this version. And the thing has always been very expressive because he's like made out of so much rock. You can definitely lose a lot of the expression on him, and his eyes, even in the 2005 movie, are always so sweet. Ben Grimm is such an amazing and sweet character. He's the nicest person. He's probably the nicest out of the 4, in all honesty. But like you get to see it, and they keep his expression. Like even here at the bottom, like him becoming the one person with the superpower who cannot transfer back to his human form, it definitely impacts him in a big way. And as dysfunctional as they are, when he does get changed back to human form, when he sees that his friends, his family are in trouble, he actually decides to turn back into the thing and be able to help them. So I think for anyone who enjoys Marvel in general, I think you'll find a great retelling of Fantastic Four. And I think this would probably have made Stanley proud, because I thought it was a really great origin story for Fantastic Four. And seeing different artists and new writers just take the stories and make them as their own is always a great thing to watch.
Yeah, I think those are 2 very interesting things that this adaptation or format jumping was interesting, is that it helped to bridge generations from Silver Age comics to more modern comics, which are much differently made and much differently thought of. But also we got to see a diverse cast of creators joining. So that I always think is really great. Thank you so much. Well, the last thing I want to talk about, something that we deal with as librarians, is you often get asked the question, is this real reading? So I thought it would be great if we all talked a little bit about the benefits of graphic adaptations for teaching and learning. Storm, what would you say to somebody who's asking a question like that?
Okay, I think it's very important. First off, as we've introduced at our first one when we were talking about classics, I think classics, manga, and graphic novels that keep original text, when teens read these, they look forward to them because they get to have pictures with them. It kind of makes them, books that could be really hard to read, like Moby Dick or Shakespeare. Teens can look at a graphic novel and be like, oh my gosh, this is kind of what I'm already into. I'm gonna try this out. And the good thing is most of them keep the original words, original text, and it helps teens expand their vocabulary, which is always a plus with parents and teachers in mind. Another thing is that I thought was a big thing is that it fosters interest in between differences between the source material and then the manga and graphic novel adaptation. So like if a teen finishes reading this and then if a teacher or a parent says, oh, by the way, did you know in the book it happened this way, or this extra scene happened, and the teen might be like, what is going, what, excuse me, and then they might actually go to the original material and try to seek out the answer themselves, and then you get them to read the actual book, which is a huge plus. Also, I love about graphic novels and manga adaptations is that they can portray really heavy topics in picture format that help teens recognize and sympathize with heavy topics like depression, like mental illness, social issues, social justice, LGBTQ themes and issues. Instead of just reading the words on a page, then they can see it, in graphic novel format, and they might get hit heavier or connect with it better. Just like if you see a movie versus reading a book, maybe a scene that you sobbed at in a book you might sob 10 times harder into watching the movie play it out in this in scene format. So there's so many good reasons why, and those are just one of my main top 3.
Yeah, those are 3 really remarkable points. Is that number 1, it can encourage leapfrogging between the formats, because if somebody connects with the graphic adaptation, they might connect with the prose as well. And then it influences people to compare and contrast, which are good critical thinking skills. Yeah, definitely. Jade, what would you add to that?
So I believe that graphic novels can act as a bridge for new readers. People who might find it hard to read certain materials, they can see the images that might guide them through the plot of a story or something. I feel like graphic novels should be accessed or should be allowed to be accessed by almost anybody in any age group. I remember growing up, my mom kind of didn't let me read graphic novels because she didn't feel like it was real or it was something that everybody else was reading. But once you allow your child, your student, or your learner to read something that they find interesting, whether it be graphic or something else, but once you allow them to dive into that graphic novel, I feel like they have a better understanding of how plots move and how themes affect the plot and how stories are told. Like I was saying, growing up, I wasn't allowed to read a lot of comics, but I definitely wish I could have, because I think I would have dived a little deeper into different materials. Comics like X-Men, they also hold themes that may be kind of a touchy subject for certain people. So that's a chance for people to learn about other cultures and other lifestyles that are out there. So I definitely recommend diving into a good manga, a good comic, a good graphic novel. They have things out there for history buffs, so you can read Marx, you can read Anne Frank. So there are a lot of different topics that you can touch on, that you can learn from these graphics.
Yeah, they really become a window to the world, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Ruria, what did you want to add to this conversation?
So I think a lot of parents and teachers and even some librarians have this idea of graphic novels as novels but easier. And I really disagree with that. I think they're not less of a challenge. It's just a different skill set that's equally important that you're developing. like, you know, in a novel, a lot of times you'll get told what the main character is feeling, you know, because they'll tell you, they're narrating it. And in a graphic novel, a lot of times you won't get told. You have to interpret their facial expressions. You have to, you know, figure out from what they're saying if it's different from what they normally say. And you know, that's like really important for like the development of social skills and empathy.
Mm.
And I think graphic novels are at their best when there's like a series of images, and then over the images are like is like a poem or something that doesn't initially feel related to what the visual panels are relaying. And you have to kind of interpret like, okay, how do these words relate to what's visually going on? And I think that's like also a really important skill, is like, you know, interpreting what a visual artist is trying to convey. And it's sort of, you know, a similar skill set to interpreting what a novelist is trying to convey, but you have different tools that you're given to interpret it. And, you know, I think all of that is great for the development of, you know, academic learning.
Yeah, when we look at the science, the data that's been collected about what happens in the brain when young people or old people are reading graphic novels, is that you're reading in 3 ways, in like this multi-sensory ways, because first you have to read the picture, then you have to read the words, and then you have to intuit what the connection is between the words and the pictures. And then there's things like, what happens in the gutter? You know, how did we jump from this to that? But it's all very natural in our minds and engaging. But when we break it down, there's a lot going on. Maria, what did you want to share with us about this?
So we do see a lot of parents in libraries not wanting their kids to pick up books with pictures on them. And whether it's reading a newspaper, reading a magazine, novel or graphic novels and manga, you're still building your vocabulary. Even if they're like small, they're still learning new words through what they're reading. And I think a great benefit of graphic material is that it's a different way to educate, not just kids, but young adults and adults. Because there's so many ways you can use them. I mean, even for a teacher, they can use them like, why was this text perhaps chosen with this imagery, with the pictures, like anything that's in the thought bubbles or speech bubbles, any dialogue, you can definitely try to distinguish why certain things were used, especially if you're trying to maybe compare and contrast a novel with the graphic material. As everyone else has pointed out as well, I mean, using images as context for the scenes in case the writing becomes a little confusing, especially with the longer novels, is a big thing. But you're doing all of this while also keeping them engaged in what they're reading. I mean, you can have them just compare and contrast a lot easier than forcing them to read a 1,000-page book or however short it might be. But I mean, we do need to always remember that there are different ways that we all learn. I mean, not everyone can learn just from hearing. I mean, we have our auditory learners, our kinesthetics, tactile learners, or even the visual ones. Not everyone learns in like one specific learning strategy. I mean, you can be a combination of some of those learning styles. We have and need all of these different options. So why don't we just use them? I mean, we have the material. We can easily, if we can't afford it, we can get it at the library, which is a great way to get a lot of the kids started with their reading.
Yeah, it does create and invite a kind of inclusion, doesn't it? Because it's such an approachable medium. I am so excited by everything that we shared tonight. I can't wait to read some of these great recommendations, especially the Manga Classics, which I don't have much experience with. So I just want to say thank you so much to everybody for sharing your expertise and passion with us tonight. Please look forward to Readers Advisories in the future, where we might talk about popular manga or classic manga. And you can go to pgcmls.info to get a library card or to search our catalog for any of the titles that you heard here tonight. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.